Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiago. I'm the CEO at Allwyn Global, and I'm the moderator today for this panel. Esports is taking over, or is it? So that's what we're going to find out soon. I have a beautiful panel with me. There's Cedric from Swiss Esports Federation. We also have Pavel from RTS Community, Peter from Ultraplay, Maximilian from Sport. Sorry, sponsor online, my monitor. We have Stepan from Parimatch and Malte from Odd Matrix. Guys, first of all, this panel is for the audience, so if you guys have any questions, and I understand this is a different format than usual, if you have any questions, any feedback, just speak to us on the chat. You can make any questions you wish. We'll try to answer all of them even during the panel, so feel free to chat with us. Maybe we'll start with a brief introduction of who you are and what's your esports background. I'll start with Stepan. Would you like to tell us about how are you involved in esports?
Hello guys, hello Tiago. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm connected with the esports as a former pro player. It was 15 years ago. After that I was involved in a big football club as a sports journalist, as a media director. I was employee of FC Shakhtar. Maybe you have to know this club from Ukraine. After that, maybe 8 years ago, I switched again to the esports and was a broadcast producer of Starlada company. Starlada is one of the biggest tournament operator from the eastern part of Europe. So I organized a lot of tournaments across the world, in Ukraine and Brazil, in Dubai, in China, and so on. Right now, I'm head of sports in the Parimatch company, one of the biggest operator here among Russian-speaking community. That's all.
Okay, thank you. That's quite an international and vast experience in the esports. Maximilian, what about you? How's your experience with esports? You are muted. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Anyway, as we all know, esports is becoming more and more important for the football clubs, and as we're fully focused on professional football teams, we of course are helping them to engage in that environment. We're bringing on their sponsorship opportunities to the platform. So it would be not very wise not to engage in that environment. So that's why we're doing it.
Yeah. And Pavel, you're next. How are you involved in esports?
Hello, everybody. My history with esports is dates back to 2013 when I studied at Warwick, a statistics department, with my younger brother. He was passionate in playing League of Legends together with his Korean guys. And I was a little bit angry because he spent too much time with playing League of Legends. So I just asked him to come up with some solution or with some monetization model, how to monetize esports. And then we naturally start to speak about the League of Legends. And I realized that League of Legends is a very interesting game from the mathematical perspective. And I had in my mind a very recent success from IBM, which developed a solution which finally beat Garry Kasparov in chess. It calls a DeepMind algorithm. And the idea was that let's do AI for the League of Legends. So together with my younger brother, who also studied at Warwick, we started to monetize League of Legends. And then we realized that we need to raise some additional money to be able to collect all data from the games. And we approach VC capitals in London, but finally they reject our ideas that this is just insane. So finally, I read an article about the football, how to use, let's say, mathematical approach in football, and I realized that football is very different like the esports, because football is you have a scout, you collect data manually, and most of the odds are compiled by manual traders. And esports is a digital game. It's played on the servers, so you have a lot of data, like let's say hundreds of data every seconds. I give you an example. For example, you have the same amount of data from one Dota match as from all ATP matches per 2 seasons.
Cool.
And then what we realize is that let's do the company which will be able to collect data. And as we have a strong maths background, we realized that this is the opportunity in the betting. We exhibit at EIG in 2015. We were successful there in the startup zone, and we received our first investment, and then founded in 2015 RTS Munity. And since 2015, I was responsible in RTS Munity either to sign first deals with data rights, because we need to ensure we need to secure the fastest source of data, or I negotiate with Betfair Exchange to be a designated market maker for esports on their exchange.
Perfect. Thanks, Pavel. What about you, Peter? How are you involved in esports?
Hello, everyone. Well, since I've been a passionate gamer for pretty much all my life, that's about 25 or more years now, but esports came later on, roughly about 2010, 2012, when I was looking more into esports than just gaming as a hobby. That's pretty much when I've joined in Ultraplay as a company. And since day one in the company, my goal was to start offering esports data, and not to a level where we can actually match what other sports are currently being offered at. And since 2014, Ultraplay has been one of the first companies in the world to offer odds and data for esports. And now, 6 years later, we've been doing quite well with clients regarding our esports based all around the world.
Distracted with the presentation, you just have to, very briefly do this so that you can keep on going with the discussion.
We work with esports for 6 years. We were one of the first to do esports in general. So this has been quite a while.
Thank you, Cedric. In some 30 seconds, how have you been with esports? Involved in esports?
Started as a pro player, Swiss champion, Call of Duty. 2009, founded a team, became the only Western European team ever to win Korean championship. My insanity. Best RFD in the world. Created an agency, made events today, 20 employees, and 50 events during the year. Germany, Switzerland, and 35 players. That's it.
Cool. Awesome. Malte, what about you? How are you involved in esports?
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I keep it short. I've been in the industry for 11 years, sports betting industry, from live trading to head of sportsbook, B2C mostly. Came into connection with esports 2017 when I was consulting esports.com in their plans to offer a sports betting product. And when I switched to Everymetrics, I wanted to introduce esports to our clients. We did this in the first version 2019 with a strong focus on CSGO, LoL, Dota. And now with the Corona crisis, we put a massive effort into sports-related titles like FIFA and NBA 2K.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Marcus, here's some with you. How have you seen the esports evolution over the past 12 months, and obviously specifically over the past couple of months with the pandemic? Millions of viewers, millions of players, games being broadcasted online, even on some TV broadcasts. How has the industry evolved till now? And the topic of our discussion is esports is taking over. Do you see it taking over? What's your experience on this?
Yeah, we had, as I mentioned, 2019, when we launched our first. Pardon? When we launched the first version, 2019. I'm sorry.
You can keep on going. It's fine.
I don't understand you. Connection is not very good. I just continue.
So I'll. Yes, please.
Okay. So we noticed 2019 when we launched our first esports product with around 50 titles. With the dedicated help of our esports client Luckbox, that the turnover is not amazing, and we didn't see much of a growth over the couple of months. That might be related to our client base who are mostly interested in football, tennis, basketball, volleyball, table tennis. But with Corona, since March, we see a significant change. We have now with FIFA and NBA 2K, more than 50% of our total turnover is coming at the moment from esports, and 9% is coming actually from the sport-related titles, FIFA and NBA 2K. That overall didn't surprise us a lot, as MOBAs, Hearthstone, and so on, they're really difficult for players to understand who normally bet on football. Yeah, they see all these flashes and weird betting markets, first dragon, first blood drawn, and so on. So it's very difficult to make them cross over. You notice as well that for titles like CSGO, it's quite different. They are much easier to understand. You have avatars who look like human beings. You have people fighting with bombs and pistols and rifles and knives. So it's much easier to understand for somebody who has no experience with it. But by far, the most successful products were FIFA and NBA 2K.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like 4,500 FIFA events per week live, and they are making FIFA alone is something like 35% of total turnover.
Yeah, I also think that people are more familiar with those games, and only an esports pro that has been playing, for example, Dota 2 or CS:GO for a number of years, hours of play, will actually understand the game and could bet on it. It's much easier for a normal person to bet on a FIFA match, a Pro Evolution Soccer, an NBA, because they're familiar with it. It's kind of transporting it to the online world. When it comes to Stefan, Parimatch has, I checked your website, and you guys have 50% of your newsfeed is esports. You actually classify esports as a sport. It's actually under the sports category, and that's an ongoing debate. Is esports a sport or not? What is your opinion on this? Is esports a sport?
Right now it's some kind of joke. Yeah, half a year ago we have a lot of joking around this, like esports is not a sports. What's going on? You're right now. Hello, we are esports, one of the sports that already exists in the world. So from the side of the operator, we have to understand that the sports, it's some kind of entertainment for everybody. So this is not the sports with the physical conditions or something like this. So we are operator. We have to entertain our customer. So we have to offer them esports, sports, cinema, politics, other entertainment stuff, and something like this. For us, esports is just a part of our big strategy. Hello, customer. We have everything that you need in this digital world. That's all. That's not a big secret or not like a separate approach to the esports. So we are considering esports as a part of the digital entertainment in the world. And I cannot say like the main part or very important part, but still a part. So we have football, basketball, esports, and other stuff in the same role. And this is our way, if I can say something like this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think the question was a little bit different. Like if we can consider esports as a sport. Yes. And from my perspective, let's see on the classification rule. If you want to have a sport on the Olympic Games, they have three main criteria. And one of the main criteria is if there are strict and measurable rules. So, and esports meet all these rules. So it means that you have measurable rules. The organizers try to do everything to be able to keep the integrity, or even they do everything to not cheat by the players. So you can observe the rules in the esports. So esports, at least from this perspective, they meet this criteria. Second, very important criteria for the Olympic Games is if they have a strong audience of people, because the sport need to be, let's say, simply approachable for the customers. And if you watch esports, it's even easier for viewers to find some esports game than the traditional sports, because today you have a Twitch, YouTube, and other platforms which are free. You just open the web and you can simply watch the games. And then another very important criteria for Olympic Games is how difficult or how expensive is to organize this event. And regarding the esports, it's very simple. You have a stadium. You just need, let's say, 10 computers if you want to play, for example, Counter-Strike or Dota. And it's very simple to organize these events. So from these three main criteria, which Olympic Games require.
Well, we are totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, if I just say something here, I'm maybe one of the few who actually has big discussions with the for example, Swiss Olympic Committee. And the big thing that you forget in when we talk about sports or not, to be honest, who really cares about that? It's only the businessmen, right? Only people with suits care about that. That's the first rule you need to understand. Nobody in the esports space of the players or the fans really cares about that. That's a really irregardless question. And second of all, when we talk about Olympic Games, what you should not forget is that the most important thing esports is missing is a democratic structure. Because in the end, the whole Olympic Federation is built on national councils, on national Olympic federations. On these federations are built on sports federations, which in the end is the people. And what we are missing is any democratic structure. So we have nowhere any voice within the governments or within the Olympic structures that are legitimate. And if you would bring esports into the Olympic Games, it would mean the IOC has to recognize a sport, and if they recognize it as a sport, all national federations need to automatically allow the National Esports Federation to join the Swiss or German or Australian Olympic Federation. But there is not even federations that could join in most countries. And if there are federations, they are mostly some strange shaped thing. So you should really remember there that without a democratic basis and with pure business controlled units in esports, which, by the way, I mean, we are tournament organizers. Yes, I like that there is no democratic position from a point of business, but I'm also in the board of a federation, and there we have to try to create a structure that is based on fairness, and only with this you could ever move to the Olympics. That's just to clear out why it's so difficult to actually go into the Olympics, not only from a side of is gaming a sports, but also in the side of structures. And we are very far away. Maybe some of you were in Lausanne, where Thomas Bach met there was a big esports forum in Lausanne with all global leaders of esports, of all publishers, CEO of Riot Games, etc., CEO of Blizzard. And there, I think they got 0 steps ahead because they found out that both sides, like one side is democratic, the other side is pure business, and both have completely different goals in their base charters. Then they both say we're doing it for nice world and stuff, but in the end they have not very compatible ideas. So that's an important thing to think about when you think about the sports aspect.
Cedric, you also mentioned that the players actually don't care about it. The businessmen do, but then esports also lives from sponsorships, for example, and those come from the businessmen and non-endemic brands. If it's an endemic brand, they will understand the industry. They kind of position themselves in the same industry. But if it's a non-endemic brand, a more corporate brand, let's say, there are the economic opportunities for them. But then if the esports industry lacks such a structure, or if the companies or the teams or the leagues like a structure, they might be put off to sponsor these teams. Do you agree? Do you think that this structure is needed for esports to be even more taking over?
There's a pro and contra, you know, like I work with many non-endemics too, with banks and insurance companies and consumer products. And there's an advantage, of course, that they are also annoyed to work with those extreme structures. You know, at some point, as a sponsorship marketing expert, you are kind of annoyed at the moment at these cold list of sponsorship deals where you never really get what you wanted to get. Like it's hard to really have an agile product in the sponsorship sports world at the moment. There's many startups who try to help, but it's at the moment most sponsorship deals are still made with a strange contract with some football club where there's many things in there that many companies don't even really use. And so there's an advantage in esports where with not a lot of structure, there is a freedom to make deals, right? There's a freedom to create events. There's a freedom to create things like Interleague Dream Masters. Somebody just invented that 10 years ago and did it, or I don't know how long ago. And so there's this freedom element that is very nice. On the other hand, big companies, when the investment amounts start to rise, so we're talking then 1, 2, 3 to 100 million, there at some point they're going to have corporate responsibility and all those questions where structures are very important. And many companies there are wishing for some neutral point that they could support, or where they can ask, or where there is referee systems that are not, because right now most referees in the world are controlled by business units, which is very strange. And so there's something that companies then at some point are like, why is it like that? Why can't we have somebody neutral? And I think that's something that is going to come maybe with time. If the franchise leagues of the big publishers take completely over, maybe it will never come. So that is not something certain.
Maximilian, you're the sponsor guy here. Have you seen an increased demand? I mean, you work with football clubs, but have you seen an increased demand from these type of non-endemic or even endemic brands for esports to widen their sponsorships to the esports teams of those clubs? Or are they interested? Are they showing interest? Do you see the evolution? I think you're muted. You have to unmute your microphone.
So what I've mainly seen is brands coming into the esports sector, which even haven't been in football. Okay, so as the traditional football is quite structured, it's very hierarchically, as Cedric also said, it is the esports sector allows mid-sized and smaller brands to enter that sector and engage in a very interesting environment. So we know the bigger brands which engage in football, and as Cedric also said clearly, they sometimes in the teams, as we're mostly speaking to the football teams about it, they're just being pushed also somehow in this esports sector, and then they don't use the opportunities. So what I rather find interesting is those sort of mid-sized brands, or maybe bigger brands who also want to dedicate themselves to it, to come into that sphere.
Okay, what about the media channels they use for their adverts? Since esports is mainly played online, football is played in stadiums, obviously broadcasted. But have you also seen a shift in there? Like the media brands are more interested in has shifted together with esports taking over a bit of this environment?
Which brands do you exactly mean? What sort of brands do you mean?
Well, I don't mean in a particular brand, maybe a non-endemic brand to esports. A brand I can think of, Turtle Wax, that they are a car brand. They sell these products, cleaning products for cars, and they actually are very, very into esports, and they sponsor a team. Also the HL, for example, and I'm speaking about brands that probably you don't work with, but this type of brands, when they approach a football team, or even let's say an operator, a betting operator, they sponsor a football team. Are they now interested as well to sponsor their esports football team, or their esports FIFA, or their esports Pro Evolution Soccer team of that same club?
Okay. No, what I've mainly seen and also said before is that the brands that currently deal with the clubs, I mean, if the team is only in FIFA, in which the big majority is, the numbers are not that great. I mean, we've seen now a push because of the Corona crisis and all of that. But if you see big teams like Paris Saint-Germain, which has like 70 million followers on, sorry, it's actually Manchester City, 70 million followers of the first team, but then they only have 6,000 followers on social media on their FIFA team. But then you take other teams like Paris Saint-Germain or Schalke, which are in, say, League of Legends or some other games, and they have then 200 or 100,000 followers. And then the brands, I mean, this is still very, very small followers number compared to the big football, to the teams, the football teams. But then it gets a bit more interesting. But just between the football side and the esport engagement side of the football teams, there's still a big gap. I think we will have more interesting numbers coming from the football teams as soon as they start getting more engaged in games outside of FIFA.
Okay. And what about iGaming brands like operators? If you look at the Premier League, for example, 60% of the football clubs are actually sponsored by one of the operators. Do you think gambling will also take over in a few years when it comes to esports sponsorships, or do you think that right now it's not regulated in the majority of the countries? Only when it gets regulated and there's a bit of more trust, this will happen.
Okay, that we will see. But what I just heard, I don't remember, I think who said it now, that the betting companies, and we have many, I think some experts and listening also from the betting side, that of course it's much easier to bet on say FIFA 20 if you play that and follow that on the internet, than on say other sort of like League of Legends and so on, and Counter-Strike, whatever. So I think this is also the opportunities for the football clubs. If they start off with FIFA, they might get in some of their betting companies they work with, or to sponsor then also their, say, FIFA esport team. And yes, I can see obviously there's a natural move into that sector.
Okay, let's shift a bit the conversation now. Peter, I haven't approached you yet. I'm sorry about that. There's a lot of panelists, a lot of stuff going on. What do you think it's going to happen? After sports resume, and the guys that are now betting on esports, probably on FIFA and whatnot. What do you think is going to happen to the esports betting market? Do you think it's going to just go back to what it was before? There's going to be a little bit of an increase. People will go back to the sports betting markets. What's your opinion? What's your take on this?
I think if we just go a little bit back to some of your questions earlier, and I think the answer lies somewhere in there. What we need to understand is that esports, or the perception of esports, is shifting, and it's shifting because of the current situation, but it has been shifting for a while now. Main reason for that is that so far esport has always been a niche market. I mean, I've always spoke to a lot of the big operators around the world, and they've always said esports is great, esports is the future, but it's not that big yet. Well, esports is big and is getting bigger, and there's only one way to go, and that's getting bigger and bigger by the time goes. But the main shift came from the actual sports that have been stopped, and this is where people who would normally never pay attention to esports, now that they've seen it, now that they've embraced it, they've tried it, they've placed a few bets on their favorite team playing FIFA, for example, which hasn't happened before because there was like football 16 hours a day on TV, so they would hardly spend any time online watching a FIFA game. And we need to understand that from now on, we'll be dealing with two completely different type of customers when it comes to esports, and especially esports betting. One of them will be the profound gamers, or the esports people who really have the knowledge, the inside knowledge in all the games. And at the same time, you would have the casual sports viewers who already know about the existence of esports, the existence of, as you mentioned earlier, NBA, 2K, FIFA, NHL, NFL, Madden, and all the other sports simulators, or not to mention the combat ones like UFC and all the rest. So I think we are looking at esports moving on to another level where we'll be catering for people from two completely different groups, and we would need to learn how to approach both of them once the traditional sports comes back on board.
Yeah, Stefan, what's Perry Match's take on this, on the evolution of esports betting after actual sports resume?
You know, I'm not see this situation right now as the big problem. Yeah, it's just some kind of opportunity to understand for everybody that maybe in sometimes you have to pay a little bit more attention to esports. To be honest, we are trying to offering esports on our platform for the 3 years right now. So for us, it's not a big challenge right now. Like, oh, guys, you have to make some money out of esports. So we made it before. And right now, it's just a very hard situation for all of the businesses that are standing on traditional sports.
But also esports events were also, I mean, there's a lot of esports events that were canceled. Major leagues were placed on hold. So they will also come back eventually. So that's going to bring some more bets to the markets, right?
Not sure that it's not cancelled. It just going from offline to online, but it's still the way to offer the bets, and it's still the way to make out money out of it. So I believe at the moment and 3 years ago that the esports betting have a big future, but you have to understand how to establish relation with that. So it's just a part of entertainment, and that's all. It's very simple. So if to discuss a bit previous questions like Olympic Games, sports, to be honest, nobody cares. it just way to entertain yourself, and that's all. For example, for me, Olympic Games, I'm respect all of the sports in the world, but I cannot understand the rules of ski jumping. I cannot understand what's going on the screen. Do you understand?
Yeah, sure. But then you're gonna have ski jumping fans that will understand, and they will.
Yeah, but it's not interesting for me. I cannot see the snow. I'm living in the big city. 70% of all over the world, they are living in the big cities. They cannot see the skies. I cannot understand how to do this, how to manage my stuff on the snow. It's not possible.
I think there's different markets, and there's people always interested in different things as well.
And Olympic Games, just think about it. Olympic Games became popular 20 years ago because you have one TV channel, and that's all. You have this box, a TV, and the Olympic Games going out of it, and that's all. Right now, I have a choice. And if I playing computer games for 6 years, okay, I'm especially me playing for 25, but it's not a big difference. The people will choose. They will choose their entertain that they understand.
Yeah,
that's all.
Can I ask something in general? Like, I know for maybe for the betting guys here, do you think it's normal sports betting people who are betting right now on FIFA and NBA 2K? Do you actually see when you do Dota or League of Legends and you say, well, it's a little bit complicated for the normal people to understand? Is it because you are mainly keeping the same customers and they are just betting, they like to bet, so they bet on basically anything that they kind of can understand and where they kind of can follow? Or so do you actually see a change in your user base where now suddenly there's more esports people betting, young people betting? Or like, do you see that? Like, what is the trend there? Like, I'm actually wondering, because for me, I don't really see. Yeah, I'm wondering. I would say there's probably not so many young people going to betting, and that's maybe something you can work on if you want to increase your business. So what's the situation there?
Pavel, I think your mic is muted. Bravo, your mic is muted. You are muted.
I would like to divide
There you go.
esports into two categories. One is like League of Legends or Dota 2, which are very complex game and very difficult to understand for traditional punters. So we don't, let's say, observe a huge amount of a new stake on this game, because this is just not, let's say, understandable for traditional punters who plays a bet on football, for example. But then you have another game like Counter-Strike, which is very simple for understanding and has a similar attributes and characteristics as the tennis. And now, especially during this crisis, we observe a lot of amount of stake on this Counter-Strike, because, as mentioned, it's similar to tennis and is very simple to understand for a traditional punters.
Yeah, it's also generational, I guess, right? I mean, I've discussed this in Prague as well. Generation Z follows esports much more than any other generation, and esports is also growing as Generation Z is growing older.
Yeah, but regarding the betting, I think that still our betting companies haven't attracted the millennial people, because if you check their website, either you have companies which you find esports just one of the many sections on their betting site, or there are some companies which have a dedicated esports. But still this is not, let's say, the right approach to engage the millennials. I think that this is still something which missing on the betting market, and this is what I already mentioned. Like when we conducted a survey recently, we revealed that the biggest issue to attract millennials is a transparency, because sport booking platforms are just not transparent. That's all.
Okay, Malte, would you like to have a take on this?
Yes, please. To answer Cedric's question, so we looked a bit into the demographics, and we see a clear shift of players normally betting on football and basketball now moving to FIFA and NBA 2K. So the question is, will this stay when the real sports coming back? So first of all, they're not coming back, all of them, on a Monday morning. We will have the effects of Corona for at least another year. That means that the players who are now placing bets on FIFA and NBA 2K can actually familiarize them with this product. And even if the real sports are back, betting on FIFA and NBA 2K offers some significant advantages. So, for example, for most of the major tournaments, you can actually watch what you're betting on. You normally can watch the FIFA match. You can't normally watch on a bookmaker site the football match you're betting on. And secondly, in FIFA and NBA 2K and NHL, you always have the big teams playing. So if you choice on a Monday afternoon to either bet on Romania First Division or Bolivia Reserve League without pictures, or to bet in FIFA on Liverpool against Real Madrid, that might still be more interesting for them. And as so many matches played at the same time, as a supporter of a specific team, let's say a supporter of Liverpool, could even be tempted to bet a multiple, because Liverpool is two matches at the same time, maybe one against Real Madrid, the other one maybe against Bayern Munich, so he can bet on that. So for sure, the share of esports in overall sports betting will go down again after Corona. Yeah, that is absolutely clear. But I'm very convinced that it will keep a significant amount of share. I'm hoping for something like 5 to 10 turnover, which would mean it would somewhere rank behind football, basketball on the level of tennis, volleyball, table tennis. And the second aspect, as mentioned, I think by Peter, esports as a whole is just too big to fail. You have hundreds of millions of players of CSGO, LoL, Dota, who are maybe not all of them already have the legal age to bet. That even counts more for Fortnite and for other titles. So they will get older, grow older. They will start their careers, earn more money, have more money to spend on betting. So for the long-term perspective, the traditional esports title will be a success. And until we reach that, we have the sports-related titles to commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Tiago, can I just add something a little bit to that?
Of course, I was going to ask Peter. Yes, sure.
Yeah, because I've earlier said that we need to look at it from two different perspectives. I think this is the question exactly where we need to look at it again. Definitely the turnover on sports-based titles such as FIFA, NBA will go down eventually when the traditional sports come back online. That's without a doubt. But at the same time, the increased turnover in CS:GO, Dota, League of Legends, or the amount of spotlight that they've got so far when we are working under these conditions, they won't go down. They will only continue to increase. And at the same time, we need to honestly say that so far, before the coronavirus, we were looking at esports and we were saying 80% of the turnover was CS:GO, League of Legends, and Dota. Games like FIFA and NBA were virtually, you would be getting like less than 5% of the turnover on those titles. And all of a sudden, we have all those people coming and looking for FIFA, NBA, as it was mentioned. And this is the reason that we see such a sharp increase in the turnover on those games, because they were virtually not existent on the esports agenda so far. And I've mentioned in previous conversations about this, that they were the sleeping giants waiting to be awakened. And this is what happened with the sports simulators. But at the same time, the interest in esport titles, MOBAs, FPSs, and stuff like that, this will gradually continue to increase with the level of new games coming in as well. This is another very important point where we need to look at that we're constantly adding new titles under the tag called esports, and this is never going to happen in traditional sports. I mean, we're not going to introduce a new sport, while in esports we gradually get a new title in every month or every few months. So this is another point to look at, that in the future, in the very near future, we'll be looking at esports increasing on various points, not just one that was so far the hardcore traditional crowd, as Pavel mentioned, not just the millennials, but the generation even after them, because as they're growing and as they become of age of 18 or above, they would still be interested in watching Twitch games, in playing, and not in TV and not in traditional sports. And this is another serious point we should be observing when we talk about the division between sports and esports.
Thank you, Peter. We have 2 minutes left on our panel. Just a brief topic. Do you think esports is also going to shape the way operators market themselves? Are we going to see an increased number of operators dedicated to esports betting solely because they have to adapt their marketing strategy to the esports bettors, and which are different people than the sports betting bettors. Stefan, quickly, do you want to have a take on this?
Again?
You have 1 minute. If the operators will shift the way they market themselves as well with esports. So if we're going to see esports betting sites exclusively for esports growing and coming up in the next few years.
We're talking a lot about like the FIFA and NBA 2K. For me, it's not an esports; it's just a simulation, and that's all. So we have questions like the people want to bet on something, and this is the secret. So they want to bet. They are trying to look for something and see something similar to football or similar to basketball. So this is not an esports. It's just a simulation with the computer games. And the esports is Dota 2, League of Legends, CSGO, maybe Valorant, and something like this. It's a competitive computer games with the different rules. So the shift exclusively to esports.
I wanted to introduce this topic before, but there was no opportunity, and now we have 20 seconds left, so I think we will need to wrap it up. because our session is just going to be closed immediately after the 20 seconds rundown. I'd like to thank everyone, all of you, for being here with me today, also the audience, and I hope I can meet you guys again, preferably in person. And thank you for everything, and see you soon.